In starting of my presentation, please allow me to say some words about, in fact, a short presentation of my academy. In fact, Military Technical Academy is a well-known institution of the Ministry of Defense working in the field of military polytechnic education. The educational process from my institution is on a full correlation with the principle established by the Bologna process, of course. The quality of the educational process, I think, is very good, being certified by the accreditation obtained by my institution at the national and the European Union level. In full complementarity with the educational process, our institution carry out specific research activities at university level. The research result being mainly focused on identifying development and innovation solution in the field of military equipment for the Ministry of Defense and, of course, for the national defense industry. On the other hand, in this slide, you can see some important research direction in our institution, starting with applications in the field of cyber defense and finishing with some application of artificial intelligence in different military areas. The rapid evolution in the field of digital technology in important areas as artificial intelligence, robotic system, exponential opportunity in cyberspace, nano and biotechnology, quantum computing processing, or advanced in the field of 5G mobile communication leads to the necessity for a substantial rethinking of the role and the importance of science, technology, and innovation as a force multiplier in the context of the current military strategy. Of course, this major request in order to ensure a credible resilience and technological security will represent certainly a milestone in a redefinition of the future EU and NATO philosophy of security. Naturally, in the context of reshaping current strategic concept, this trend is supported both by the dynamics of the specific developments and, of course, on doctrinal approaches in this field. As an integral part of EU and NATO in the new context of the global boom in science and technology, Romania is practically convicted to respond, both from the perspective of rethinking of the national doctrinal framework and especially from the perspective of identifying potential solutions, including those of a technological and innovative nature, meant to ensure its own resilience and security in front of the new emerging and disruptive technology of the present, but especially of the future. Regarding the remodeling of the internal conceptual frameworks in the national strategy for the country's defense for the period 2020-2024, cyber attacks, respectively the integration of emerging and disruptive technology in the offensive tools of cyber entity, are identified as direct threats to Romanian security interests and, of course, objectives. Also, the low level of cybersecurity of our ITNC infrastructure, the widening of the technological gap, the quality of the educational act are assimilated in this document to be potential vulnerability in the context of ensuring the country's security, including ensuring its own technological security. So, possible solution proposed in this strategy are referred to eliminate this difficulty based on maximizing resources along the RDI line, capitalizing on the potential of emerging and disruptive technology, acting upon the development and use of the armed forces, and on increasing of the resilience of national critical infrastructure. From a similar perspective, Romania's military strategy puts in evidence as dedicated ways of action some specific tools as the aggressive pursuit of technological advantage, especially in the field of emerging and disruptive technology, or the development of offensive cyber and space capability. The new technology of the future are certain to change the nature of warfare so that some of the most important missions of the Romanian army in the context of ensuring resilience to their attacks are focused on specific attempts to avoid technological surprise, modernization of the armed forces, especially in the field of cybernetics and emerging and destructive technology, or the accelerated modernization of the military education system, including the university research component also. Two. Last but not least, Romania has adopted a few other programmatic documents in this field, of course, in the context of boosting the development of new critical technology and of ensuring its own resilience and technology security. So it's very important to mention here some documents related to the Romanian cybersecurity strategy, the national RDI strategy belonging to Ministry of Education and Research, the strategy of the Ministry of Defense in the field of research and development and innovation for the period 2021-2027. Having as starting point the character and nature of the information specific to this topic, I start to specify that the sources of my documentation use only open source documents from open source, and consequently, please accept this presentation incorporates a certain degree of generality. On the other hand, given the high degree of resources needed to be allocated in the development of emerging and destructive system, you can see right only 5% of the world's nations are able to effectively generate such technology. The rest of the country focusing on the implementation of solutions able of ensuring the most consistent level of resilience. Of course, is the case of our country, Romania. Finally, related to the most important dual-use facility existing in this moment in Romania, in the field of ensuring resilience and technological security, I would like to mention a couple of things. The Cyber Intelligence National Center, very important, with the role of CERT at the national level, is intended for knowing, preventing, and counteracting the vulnerabilities, risks, and threats to the cybersecurity of Romania. Of course, its main mission is to correlate technical defense system with information capability so as to identify and provide legal beneficiary with the information necessary for preventing, limiting, and or stopping the consequences of an aggression in the field of ITNC system, which represent our critical infrastructure. Our next facility, a very important facility in this field, due to its excellent expertise, quality of the educational system, research, and ITNC facilities, in 2020, Bucharest was selected by representatives of the governments of the EU member states at the seat of the new European Cybersecurity Industrial Technology and Research Competence Center. The Cybersecurity Competence Center will improve the coordination of research and innovation in cybersecurity in the European Union. It will also be the EU main instrument for pooling investment in cybersecurity research, technology, and industrial development. Some words about the extreme light infrastructure nuclear physics, shortly ELI project. This project is a top research infrastructure of one European interest and part of the European Science Foundation roadmap. ELI hosts the most intensive beamline system, develop new interdisciplinary research opportunity with light from these lasers and secondary radiation derived from them. Finally, I try to put in light some interesting example of applied research in this high-tech facility. So this application are focused on the study of nuclear materials for space science application, industrial application, for example, for the management of nuclear materials or advanced techniques in the field of radioscopy or tomography. Research Institute for Artificial Intelligence is a facility belonging to Romanian Academy and represent an important and well-known center of competence and active dissemination of knowledge in the field, of course, of artificial intelligence. The main research projects of this institute are in the field of natural language processing, machine learning, and knowledge acquisition, computer-assisted training, and integrated information management, and geospatial geoin technology. On the other hand, within the top university in Romania, there are dedicated research centers in the field of artificial intelligence. I want to mention here only the National Center for Information Technology from Polytechnical University of Bucharest, or West University Artificial Intelligence Hub from Timișoara. Romania has also a well-defined network of national research institutes with major scientific results and connected to the European and world scientific flow. So, in the topic of this presentation, I only like to mention the National Institute for Research and Development in Chemistry, with achievements in the field of nanomaterials and new emerging technology, the National Institute for Research and Development in Microtechnology, with important achievements in the field of micro and nano system for RF and photonics, nanotechnology capability, carbon-based nanomaterials, and so on. And finally, National Institute of Research and Development for Biological Sciences, with important concern in the field of biotechnology. An important project for Romania. The National Center of Reference in the field of quantum telecommunications, shortly Quantec project, is in progress in a solution competition. Start this project that aims to establish a national research and development hub with the main mission of ensuring the assimilation and development of emerging technology in the field of quantum telecommunications. In addition, the role of this facility is to support Romanian educational training process, research, and the high-tech company in the development of an ecosystem in the field of quantum telecommunication, of course, generally speaking, in the field of quantum processing, computing processing techniques. Of course, in full complementarity with the infrastructure above described, in the Romanian army, they are operating with very good scientific results, a series of essential research entity, which are able to ensure the resilience and technological security. I refer here to the Cyber Defense Command. This command acts under the command and control of the defense staff and represents the military authority with the responsibility in the field of the development, protection, and resilience of IT military networks and services, supporting, of course, the Romanian force structure. In this expertise area, the Cyber Defense Command has many important responsibilities, such as cyber incident management, securing the protection and resilience of the military networks against the cyber threats, risk, identification and evaluation of cyber risk, or contributions to the development and optimization of military and national cyber defense capabilities. Military Equipment and Technology Research Agency, METRA. Its basic mission is to perform fundamental, oriented, applied scientific research and technological development in order to introduce the technical progress in the military field, to create new types of military technique with advanced performances, as well as for modernizing existing one. In order to done its task, this research institute's backbone is made by research and innovation centers in the field of ITNC, armaments, CBRN defense, Air Force, or the Navy. Another important facility in Romanian Army is represented by the National Institute for Research Development in Military Medicine. This institute has as main task the research and innovation activities in the field of biotechnology, focused on the natural and artificial nanostructures, cellular biotechnology, advanced nanomaterials, bioinformatics, or increasing the protection level against the CBRN risk and assuring resilience against the specific stress. Also, it's very important to mention that this important research facility incorporates a strong technological development unit, which is able to cover many technology maturity level between technology validation and demonstration into a relevant industrial environment. So some important research things from Military Technical Academy Ferdinand I. Center of Excellence for Advanced Cybersecurity Technology from Military Technical Academy Ferdinand I is a research structure whose main mission is to develop the cyber defense capability for the Romanian Army. The specific activity carried out between this center are mainly focused on developing innovative solutions for preventing, detecting, and responding to cyber threats, consulting and expertise in the field of cybersecurity, or training of the cyber fighters by conducting complex cyber defense exercises. Another excellence center from our institution is the Center of Excellence in the field of robotics and autonomous systems. This center is a research structure whose main mission is to carry out specific research and development in the field of sorry, I put the next slide. And development in the field of robotics, autonomous system, with direct view to the development of fixed or mobile robotic systems, robot swarms, or autonomous navigation system, mapping, analysis, and decision Mesh communication, very important direction of research in the field of robot swarms, or finally, some important application in the field of pattern recognition. In the specific context of the current rapid evolution of new critical technologies with emerging and disruptive impact, respectively of the necessity to ensure resilience and technological security, in this light that I try to put, in my opinion, the most important trends and future project for our country. So we can discuss about the necessity to assure the increasing of the quality of the educational process in a full agreement, of course, with the latest technological discovery. Of course, in the field of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, big data, quantum computing processing, nano, it's possible, nano and biotechnology. Maintaining and consolidating the technological advance in certain fields of interest in which our country has a tradition, a long tradition, and certified expertise, to mention only cybersecurity, for example, laser or nanophysics, and biotechnology. Allow me to say some words about some important future projects and targets for the Romania in the field of assuring the resilience and technological security. All these future projects are based, in fact, on creating regional hubs in the field of artificial intelligence technology, of course, and its applications, implementing a national reference center in the field of quantum communication. I remember here the Quantec project is an important project, ensuring a level of resilience covering the critical infrastructure of our country and, of course, the services, developing a secure cyber environment for the citizen on the private, while generating an integrated national mechanism, including as a doctrinal level of addressing security crisis. Finally, in my opinion, some conclusions about the necessity of Romania to improve its quality in the field of assuring resilience and technical approaches. Thank you very much for your attention. And of course, finally, I expect, if I want to ask you some questions from the audience. Thank you very much. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, General Vizitiu. Thank you for this overview of the institutional infrastructure dealing with the new challenges in the technological era. Actually, you and the institution that you described earlier are in the forefront, in the trenches of this new battle, the technological battle. I wish you the best in this endeavor. And without further ado, I will move to our next panelist, Professor Greg Siemens, from Center for Russian Studies, a close friend of our center, a close friend of our. Professor Siemens, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor Marches. It's quite a welcome. So, okay, I shall begin with a slight caveat first, because although I'm going to be speaking on resilience and technological security, I'm going to be speaking at it from an entirely different point of view. So this leaves me in the unusual position of speaking on and being quite out and apart from what everyone else has been talking about. So whereas the previous presentations have been focusing on the technological aspect, that is the tangible, the physical aspects of technology and their impact, I'll be talking about the intangible, and that is the role and effect of information and communication as a political technology and a geopolitical technology. So something that shapes and prepares the information preparation of the battlefield, if we want to call it that, and the cognitive preparation of the battlefield. And so if we understand information and communication, especially within the context of competitive or conflictual context, information as it is communicated is not intended necessarily to educate and enlighten, but rather to influence and persuade audiences. And so this is going to be one of my themes and points in this. And if we bring into this the actual drivers behind the increased motivation and commitment to communicating, one of those conditions is when there is increased political and geopolitical competition as a result of an evolving order, be it political or geopolitical. And what we see in the current context, and the Black Sea region is no exception to this, is that globally there is a transformation and evolution underway. And then what we begin to see is an evolution away from a Western-centric US unipolar configuration towards a more non-Western-centric multipolar configuration. And this is already being seen, especially Middle East, North Africa, Asia, including Central Asia. And so this is driving things. And if we're looking at geopolitics, one of the points of geopolitics, because with every kinetic operation, there is a non-kinetic operation that should support it. Because what happens is, and accompanies these changes to the physical world, are these supporting roles of the information domain in order to affect the cognitive domain. And so what we expect to see, and what we do see, is that there is a repositioning and a positioning by actors within this context that are trying to define the physical environment by interpreting it in such a way that it is convenient for their particular interests and objectives. So we can certainly see that happening in the current context. So we have these issues of especially social media and other media as well, mainstream media. But the importance of social media over the other media, perhaps at this particular point in time, is that there is a gradual transformation away from offline politics and communication and mobilization towards a more digital form of that. Because one of the advantages of this, it flattens the constraints and restraints of time and space on these political endeavors. And at what we see, there's a proliferation of different channels of communication which engage in a more interpretive form. That is, as I said before, this is not about informing or enlightening a public, but to persuade and to influence them. I mean, this is nothing new in politics or international relations. If we go back even as far as Edward Bernays, he said that there is no kind of randomness in terms of how news appears and when it appears and what tone that news is. So we can see currently these particular things. And if we look, we've got different competition by different blocks, not least of which, I mean, what has already been mentioned is Russia and its influence and impact upon Black Sea, and especially the operations and activities of those non-NATO, but also NATO actors in the region. And of course, this is being done vice versa. So hence, this has an impact on the, of course, the physical environment. So at the moment, we've got naval exercises in the physical realm, but also Russia is conducting these physical military exercises in proximity of the same space, the geographic space. And this is all part and parcel. I mean, you can call it information warfare, you can call it perhaps even military diplomacy, as some would call it. But it is there with an intent and with a purpose. And if we look at these things, there are other actors if we're looking in the region. So another actor which is becoming much more active in the region, of course, is Turkey. And Turkey, its current position is different than what it used to be in the Cold War, when it was positioned itself as being a bloc against the expansion of Soviet influence and expansion. And the Cold War locked it in that particular capacity and role during the Cold War. However, if we look what's happened afterwards, the breakup, the end of the Cold War and the rise of the global war on terrorism with events in Iraq, for instance, and also what's been happening in Syria. So these are bordering regions. What has happened is Turkey has begun to position itself differently. It pursues its own interests as attempting as a regional actor. So this is not only in the Black Sea, but beyond into the Middle East, North Africa. And of course, this is accompanied by informational support. So whereas Russia has RT, Russia Today, Turkey has TRT World, which is nothing new. It's a form of public diplomacy, BBC, Deutsche Welle, France 24, etc., etc. These kinds of assets, which are intended to shape the information realm in an advantageous manner. Now, looking at how that plays out, one can see that this is getting played out in a manner which is starting to anticipate this decline of influence of this Western-centric order to a non-Western-centric order. So you have a look at these particular media assets are talking about, this is preparing this information preparation and cognitive preparation for the target audiences to accept and influence their particular opinion and worldview, but also their behavior towards this reshaping of the physical world. So the information realm is being used to shape the cognitive realm, which in turn is used as a means to more readily be able to influence and shape the physical realm. Now, it's a dangerous game, of course, because we're looking when you get such configurations of decline and rise of other powers, is usually instability that results. What I've talked about thus far are those international aspects, but and I think Professors Julian and Natchez would be disappointed if I did not go out on a bit of a limb to say something at least mildly provocative to shake things up a little bit. So I would say that one of the things which can and will shape the wider Black Sea region is the domestic politics of the Western order, Western civilization, if you like. And especially if we look at what is happening within this internal politics, which is becoming increasingly self-destructive. And these actors are also using social media and digital communication as something to add effect to their particular program. And what I am talking about especially is this idea of wokeism and cancel culture, because I would consider this perhaps even a greater security threat, especially when it comes to this, what it can potentially and what it is actually doing to, I would say, the detriment of the fundamentals and foundations of the principles of Western civilization. Because this cancel culture, although it has been projected as being something which is holding to account those powerful interests, its ideological roots are much more familiar to people who have grown up in the Eastern Bloc, because what they are talking about is not necessarily holding the those in power to account, but they start to refer to the ideas of liberation and egalitarianism and these particular aspects. Because if you delve into the facts of the fine print of this ideological program, this is increasingly having parallels to, well, some say neo-Marxism, others say Marxism itself, because this is trying to reshape something, this identity of what it is to be West, what it is to be Western civilization. So it's going into group identity, individual identity, and those that are not deemed as fitting are subject to this value and virtue signaling, which is intended to erase those. So not only should one keep an eye on what's happening externally, but also internally. And certainly this is causing problems within society, this idea of cancel culture, and it can fundamentally alter those political dimensions and trends and processes within the wider Black Sea area. So if we look at these things together, not only does one need to keep an eye on what is happening externally, what foreign actors are doing, state actors, but also non-state actors. There is also the aspect of understanding what internal actors are doing. So those who have gained agency and are creating this toxic culture, which is erasing history and values and so forth, which the Western and especially European civilization has built its political, its economic and its military prowess on, is being systematically undermined. And this has a significant implication for the wider Black Sea. because it's on the edge of where you have these civilizational movements, but also these geopolitical movements. And at the center of this is the role of these political technologies, which you could call them, this role of information and communication. And it's a matter of understanding how these work. And as I say, this is not only a matter of communicating your message, but also understanding what the other side is saying and what its potential impact is. So when we look at this particular stance today, I mean, it's leading to a situation where this political and geopolitical vulnerabilities are being exacerbated, which are being exacerbated further because of the conditions of the coronavirus pandemic. And the coronavirus pandemic has absolutely, it's brought about to the surface those existing crises which Europe has not been able to resolve, nor the United States. That is economic crises and the crisis of mass migration. So bringing all these things together, it doesn't paint a very pretty picture or a very optimistic one, but is one that needs to be managed. And at this stage, this is the point that it is lacking at the moment, because there is only short-term consideration, a kind of populist one-upmanship over a geopolitical opponent, a political opponent, etc., without understanding the likely cascading effects of one's actions in the current time. And this is not only referring to physical acts, but also rhetorical acts. And maybe, Natchez, I can finish up there so that we can hear your wonderful thoughts. You're not hearing much as...
Not you, was
Yeah, you got it on the listen only.
Ok, mă aud acum? Da, scuze. Sorry. Okay, I was thanking you for addressing the geopolitical conundrum of this region and putting some pieces in this regional puzzle, thus offering us a better understanding of the complexity and the sophistication of the game. Of course, we talked mainly about the the technological battle for in some way in a conventional context. You spoke about the battle for souls and minds, which also has a technological sphere of deliverance, and this is the social platform info warfare with all its components and so forth. You talked about the cancel culture. Yes, I know this is a very a big controversy, and it's also a topic that not too many people want to address. I only will tell you a joke regarding one of the biggest controversy in the US right now regarding the teaching of critical race theory in schools. And after the Democrats lost in Virginia election, the Republicans said that the only critical race theory that the Democrats should be understanding is that the only important theory is that of winning a critical race. So they should be focused on this one. Thank you very much for your presentation. I now should be passing to my presentation, and if the colleagues will allow me to share my PowerPoint presentation with you. That would be excellent. I should have here down on the page a screen share icon, which I now have. Thank you. And if I want to choose a PowerPoint, dacă vreau să aleg if I want to choose a PowerPoint document, would I go of Windows or Chrome tab? I only have these three choices. Well, it's complicated.
Din Chrome.
Din Chrome.
Din Chrome.
E mai tare.
Nu văd unde anume din Chrome, nu mă duce pe o posibilitate de a alege folderul de pe desktop, de asta întreb. Eu am folderul pe desktop și nu pot face această.
NATO reprezintă o importantă oportunitate.
Chrome tab ar trebui să fie practic Se vede ceva acum? Am făcut screen share la întreaga.
Da.
It's okay? Okay, I'm not seeing you guys, but you see the presentation. This is what's important. Okay, so no, this is another presentation. Sorry. Not this one. Supercomputers. This one. Okay. So, computing power plays a key role in enabling data analytics and machine learning in cybersecurity, for scientific research, and in military domains like nuclear warhead design and detonation simulation, and so forth. Computing also has an industrial ramification, not least due to a relatively small number of players that hold key spots in the value chain. This leads to some to argue that the stakeholder of computational power define who has control over the, and access to the benefits of computer-based technologies like, for example, artificial intelligence. So in this presentation, I will focus mainly on two complementary segments of computing. The high-performance computing, also known as HPC or supercomputing, and quantum computing. Both are very distinct in terms of maturity. Supercomputer has been widely used in scientific research, meteorology, the military, finance, and industry since 1990s. Meanwhile, quantum computing is still an experimental stage, but has highly disruptive potential in both civilian and military domains. It seeks to exploit the properties of quantum mechanics, and as such constitutes a whole new paradigm in computing. Indeed, quantum computing will multiply computing power exponentially with considerable cybersecurity implications and industrial and scientific applications. The field has experienced swift progress in recent years, even if large-scale quantum computers might still be a decade away. The race for computing power, including quantum computing, has become a key element of the US-China technological competition. Yet, the competition is far from being solely a US-China matter. For logical reason, considering its application and implication, computer power is a strategic priority for European government as well as for the European Union. And this is one of the main aspects that I want to address in this material. This is especially the case when it comes to quantum computing. When I'm talking about European Union, countries around the world have recognized that quantum science has moved from an academic field of research to a fast-growing technological sector. So, I would like to show you a graphic and to go further into my presentation how high-performance computing evolved in the recent decades. High-performance computing or supercomputer refers to computer system often called with extremely high computational power, able to solve very, very complex problems at high speed. The development of supercomputing has been and remains largely state-driven, as their acquisition and running costs are high, and as they have uses in national security, for example, nuclear simulation, scientific and medical research, and also climate modeling. Nonetheless, the rise of the big data economy and the computing power also required to train artificial intelligence algorithms and to run simulations together with the growth of cloud computing have democratized the recourse to high performance computing in industry. Today, US computer and processor companies dominate the market in Europe, while China computer and processor companies dominate the market in Europe, dominate the market in order to it mainly has developed indigenously, but also Europe, I want to say that Europe is seeking to catch up by supporting its industrial base and developing its processor technology, but is facing internal hurdles that are industrial, technological, and political. And that is something that I will address in my presentation. Government have historically played an important role in the development and growth of computer technology, especially supercomputer technology. Even in the recent decades, computer chip development has been mainly driven by the private sector, not least by the smartphone industry. The public sector is still the main consumer of concentrated computed power today. In 2018, in Europe, over 90% of the supercomputer operating time was by universities or academic research centers, whereas the remaining 10% served for commercial purposes and end users. Chief among state-driven users of computing power are national security users. Supercomputer can be used to design, to develop, to manufacture and test weapons, including nuclear weapons and weapons platforms that collect, process, analyze, and disseminate intelligence, also for cryptography, for combat simulation, and for missile defense system. Supercomputers are also used for weather forecasting and scientific research, including medical research. The COVID-19 pandemic is said to have promoted new needs for biomedical application and new drugs development. Since supercomputers have dual application, then have been subject to export restrictions in the 1990s. Today, the US-Chinese competition clearly plays out in the realm of supercomputers due to concerns about both intellectual property and the potential uses that can be made of US chip technology. In April 2021, the Biden administration added several entities involved in supercomputer industry to that entity list, including China National Supercomputing Center, and this is to prevent exports of US technology to such entity. Here you see the distribution of supercomputers by countries. Across the globe, a small number of countries possess significant supercomputing capabilities. You see here that China is leading the Pluton, and the US also is on top of the game, followed by second-tier supercomputer powers like Japan, Germany, France, Netherlands, Ireland, UK, and Canada. Well, in 2018, the president of the European Investment Bank regretted that, and I quote him here, while a third of the global demand for supercomputers capability comes from European industry, small and medium enterprises and researchers, only 5% of the supercomputing capabilities were being provided by European HPC centers. So Europe hosts one main player in supercomputing. It's called Atos, French company, but it is seeking to host more machines on the continent through cooperative ventures and to develop capacity in area where supercomputer value chain is largely absent, and notably processors. European companies are not present all along the production cycle for supercomputers. The company I mentioned earlier, Atos, has its own interconnection system, BXI, but relies on non-European manufacturers for processors. The US-based company AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA mainly. As suggested by a representative of the company, it is indeed agnostic when it comes to processing unit providers. French and EU authorities have, however, identified the absence of a European provider as a problem and sought to develop some alternatives. In 2019, the head of the French Atomic Energy Commission estimated that while the CEA has been working with Intel, in the future there should be, and I quote, a sovereign European processor, because France would not want to be subject to an inability to have these processors. Another problem is public procurement choices. Government procurement programs are a key dominant of supercomputer hardware providers' outlooks. This is especially true when companies have little chance to sell into foreign markets. Today, the United States and China are keeping their market closed to foreign vendors. In the US, the domestic industry is currently strongly supported with a Buy American requirement for the purchase of supercomputers. A further limitation is the absence of European companies in cloud-based supercomputer services. Cloud service suppliers in Europe remain largely American companies. For example, the French firm Atos has partnered with Google Cloud to provide a hybrid cloud solution for data analysis and machine learning. This is not without problems for data security, as you can imagine. Consequently, European has pushed for the development of for EU cloud offers, including HPC applications. Europe finally has a funding problem. The European Investment Bank in 2018 called for significant investment to be made in infrastructure, access to big data, and tailor-made complex software solution. Maria Gabriel, then Commissioner for Digital Economy and Society, identified the funding gap in European supercomputer of 500 million to 750 million per year, compared to the US, China, or Japan. So 500 million to 750 million euro per year compared with US, China, or Japan investments in this area. One conclusion of the report was that no single country in Europe by itself has the capacity to sustainably set up and maintain an exascale supercomputer ecosystem within a competitive time frame. As its use has become more common, supercomputer has become a priority use issue for most EU member states in recent years, and with an attempt to address the limits of Europe's computing powers, the need became more pressing from 2015 onward, after both US and China developed their plans for HPC, for supercomputers. There was thus pressure in Europe to aim for large computer, the so-called exascale computer, and to make Europe not only a consumer, but also a producer of computing power. Within Europe, too, Thierry Breton, the EU Commissioner for Industry, back then the CEO of the company Atos that I mentioned, strongly supported the initiative. The result has been new supercomputer initiatives and funding at the European scale as part of a broader agenda for European digital infrastructure. Two initiatives in Europe are ongoing: a plan to build European supercomputers, including exascale supercomputer, known as the Euro HPC Joint Undertaking, GU, and the plan to develop a European microprocessor for extreme scale computing, known as European Processor Initiative, or EPI. A few words about the other technology that is critical in this discussion, the quantum computing. Apparently, computing power doubles every 2 years as the number of transistors on integrated circuits doubles. This trend is facilitated by the gradual reduction in size of the semiconductors, together with other advancement in digital electronics. However, we now frequently read that we are reaching the end of that law as we are close to reaching the physical limits of nanoscale computer chips. According to a 2018 report by the European Investment Bank, by 2025, hardware configuration could come to an end of exponential capacity increase of classical computers. In contrast to this physical limitation faced in classical computers, quantum computing exploits the characteristic of quantum physics and promises to multiply computing power exponentially. Consequently, quantum computing has become a strategic field in which governments, research laboratories, technology companies are increasingly investing with a view to reaping the benefits of the quantum advantage. Talking about application and implication of quantum computing, I'd like to emphasize that quantum computing is one segment of the field of quantum information sciences, which is vast and also includes communication and cryptography, meteorology, simulation, wide-ranging application domains, metrology and sensing. So quantum information technology currently stand at various levels of readiness. Compared to sensing and cybersecurity application, quantum computing is the furthest away from market readiness. But it also has the highest disruption potential. Conscious of the step change that will come when quantum machines are ready, both industry and governments are examining the practical use cases of this intermediate device that will likely be available within a decade. To begin with, quantum machines will speed up the development of artificial intelligence as they will allow acceleration of deep learning and neural networks with both civilian and military applications. In the military domain, for instance, quantum artificial intelligence could facilitate the development of autonomous weapon system and accurate intelligence, especially when coupled with other quantum technologies. Besides artificial intelligence, quantum computers will be especially suited for tasks of factorization, optimization, and simulation. Factorization is especially relevant for cryptography and makes the cybersecurity implication of future large-scale quantum computers a major concern for nation states. In 2015, the US National Security Agency, the well-known NSA, updated its encryption system to make it quantum resistant. While significant advances in quantum computing are still required to break current encryption methods, a fully functioning quantum computer could allow a country or a non-state actor to break any public encryption key that is secure with current technology. That includes the crypto system currently used to secure online payments, for example. So according to some estimates, it would take a classical computer roughly 300 trillion years to crack an encryption key, the current 2040 bits, while a quantum computer with 4,000 stable qubits could, in theory, do the same in just 10 seconds. So this is to have an image of the discrepancy of the two technologies. Conversely, quantum technology can also be used to secure communication. Finally, quantum computers would be very useful for optimization tasks required for autonomous vehicle, for example, another application. With a fully autonomous fleet, it should theoretically be possible to optimize the individual journey of each vehicle according to its place of departure and destination. Conventional algorithms could work with a limited quantity of vehicle, but beyond a few hundred vehicles and journeys, traditional calculation capacity would be largely saturated. Optimization is also key for actors in the energy sector in the development of electrical networks and the management of electricity consumption in the context of a multiplication of electric vehicles. I wouldn't close my presentation without putting Europe in the center of our discussion, because the decade of the 2010 has seen a clear acceleration of global competition around quantum information processes technologies. While in 2014, the British Ministry of Defense judged the field of quantum information processing as too immature at that time for near-term defense and security application. The UK Defense Science and Technology Laboratory reported in June 2020, and we all remember that statement, and I quote, "The progress achieved both nationally and globally has exceeded early expectation, so that today many regard the rush to develop quantum computing as a new space race. Quantum computing has become a race not least because there are risks of lagging behind. A first risk is cybersecurity, as I explained above, as quantum computer would be able to break current encryption protocols. Another risk is access to technologies. Quantum cryptography and quantum computers indeed are making their way onto defense and strategic good lists and are thus becoming subject to export restrictions. The enabling technology that are need to must make quantum computers work can also be placed under control. Certain qubits require extremely cold temperatures that are obtained thanks to cryostats, a technology whose export to China, the US, is considered blocking. Around the world, several countries have either developed or are in the process of designing strategies and investment plans to shape their ecosystems. The UK, Germany, and France have significant quantum research capacities and public and some, let's say, flourishing startup ecosystems. As a conclusion, I would say that the private companies' access to high-performance computing and new levels of conventional computing power, together with the emergence of disruptive quantum information technology, are changing the calculation of government, researchers, and private companies alike. Private companies are finding new ways to use the potential of data analysis. Governments are developing strategies to gain relative technological power and ensure the security of their digital system, while scientists hope that they will make new discoveries in medicine and the fight against, let's say, climate change. Technological progress is also promising to significantly reduce the energy consumption of computers, which has become a bigger concern and uses continue to grow. The global distribution of computing power is changing. While the US has for long dominated the sector of conventional computing, not least with the defining role played by the company IBM, recently China's Lenovo company has become the first supercomputer, first HPC company worldwide in terms of market share. Today, US and China are also neck and neck in the race for quantum computing, with massive investment and impressive technological achievements. It raises the risk of developing hardware-dependent tools and technology dependencies. But the ongoing quantum revolution is nurturing a wealth of actors from research laboratories to startup investment funds, which will further redistribute computing power across the globe. Technology with a lower level of readiness software, Europe in particular, a chance to position itself early in this emerging sector and develop capacity to lock the value chains of quantum computing in hardware and software. So I will stop here with my presentation with the conclusions.
Thank you all for these very interesting ideas you just shared with us. And many thanks to the team of Center for Conflict Prevention and Early Warning for accepting to coordinate this panel. After a short break, we will be back with the next panel starting at 6 p.m. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you.